I'm going to explain the parameters used in scikit-learn's spectral clustering algorithm. We'll focus on _n_clusters and _assign _labels . Get ready to become a spectral clustering pro. This question tests your understanding of how _n_clusters and _assign _labels affect the results of spectral clustering. I will explain each parameter and then evaluate the truth of each statement. The _n_clusters parameter directly controls how many groups the algorithm should find. It's like telling the algorithm, I want to find 5 clusters in this dataset. Simple, right? After spectral clustering finds the best representation of the data, it needs to assign each data point to a cluster. If you set _assign _labels equals k-means , the algorithm uses the k-means algorithm to do this final assignment step. Think of k-means as the final cleanup crew. This is false. You can set _n_clusters to any positive integer. It doesn't have to be less than the number of data points. You could even have more clusters than data points, although it wouldn't make much sense. This is false. _assign _labels equals discretize and assign _labels equals k-means use completely different methods for assigning data points to clusters. They often produce different results. It is a bit like comparing apples and oranges. The spectral clustering process involves transforming data into a lower dimensional space, and then using clustering algorithms to identify groups. I'm explaining the parameters in scikit-learn's spectralclustering function. These parameters control how the algorithm works. This parameter tells the algorithm how many clusters you want to find. Think of it like telling a chef how many plates you need to make. You can choose any positive whole number. It's not limited by the total number of data points you have. This parameter decides how the algorithm assigns each data point to its final cluster after doing the initial clustering work. I have 2 options here: k-means and discretize. I'll explain this parameter. It directly controls how many clusters you want your algorithm to find. Think of it like deciding how many slices you want in a pizza. You set the number, and the algorithm tries its best to divide the data accordingly. It's not limited by the total amount of data points, although having more clusters than data points doesn't make much sense. For example, you might set _n_clusters equals 3 to find 3 distinct groups of data points. This parameter determines how the algorithm assigns data points to the clusters that are already found. It offers 2 primary options. The first is k-means which uses the k-means algorithm, a popular method for clustering data, as a secondary clustering step, after spectral embedding is completed. The second option is discretize, which uses a simpler, threshold-based approach to assign data points to the clusters. Choosing between them depends on your specific needs and data characteristics. This is the overall title, reminding us that we're analyzing parameters specifically for the spectral clustering algorithm in scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is a very popular machine learning library in Python. I'm looking at scikit-learn's spectralclustering function, a powerful tool for grouping similar data points. It uses fancy math, eigenvectors and eigenvalues, to find the best way to cluster data. Think of it as a sophisticated way to find groups within a dataset. This parameter tells the algorithm how many groups you want to find. It's like saying, I expect 3 different types of customers. The algorithm does its best to create that many clusters, but it doesn't guarantee exactly that number. For example, I could say, I want 5 clusters. The algorithm will try to find 5. This parameter is all about how the algorithm labels the data points. After figuring out the clusters, I have 2 choices: k-means or discretize. K-means uses the k-means algorithm, another clustering method, as a final step for labeling. Discretize uses a simpler method based on thresholds, like dividing values at a certain point. Think of this as deciding whether to paint the clustering result with a paintbrush or a stamp. I disagree with this statement. I can want 5 clusters even if I have only 2 data points. It might not make sense practically, but it's not against the rules of the algorithm. This statement is false. This is completely correct. If I choose, the algorithm first does its spectral magic and then uses k-means to neatly assign labels to the resulting data points. This statement is true. I totally agree. NCLUSTERS sets the goal. It's the number of clusters I'm aiming to discover in my data. It's true. I strongly disagree. The k-means and discretize methods are very different ways of labeling. They are unlikely to provide identical results. This statement is false. This is a quiz about understanding the parameters in spectral clustering. It is testing my understanding about how parameters affect the algorithm. The quiz question focuses on testing my understanding of the two key parameters within the spectral clustering function. This question tests my understanding of the spectral clustering function in the scikit-learn library. I need to know how the n_clusters and assign labels parameters work to answer correctly. Specifically, I need to understand how these parameters affect the final clustering results. Let's dive in. This parameter controls the number of clusters I want the algorithm to find. It's straightforward. I set this value before running spectral clustering. This parameter determines how I assign data points to the clusters after the spectral embedding step. I have two choices. K-means or discretize Using K-means means I'll use the K-means algorithm for the final assignment, which is more sophisticated. Discretize uses a simpler threshold-based method. This statement is incorrect. There's no rule stating that the number of clusters must be less than the number of data points. This statement is correct. If I choose assign labels equals K-means the algorithm uses K-means clustering on the embedded data to assign the final labels. This is false. K-means and discretize use completely different approaches. Therefore, they will generally produce different results. This statement is true. n_clusters directly controls how many clusters I'm looking for. This is the overall title of the quiz, which is focusing on understanding the parameters of spectral clustering. This question tests your knowledge of the NCLUSTERS and ASSIGNLABELS parameters in scikit-learn's spectralclustering function. I'm assessing your understanding of how these parameters affect the clustering results. Think of it as a pop quiz on spectral clustering. Let's see how you do. The NCLUSTERS parameter directly tells the algorithm how many clusters you want it to find. It's like telling a chef how many portions of a dish to prepare. You specify the number, and the algorithm does its best to create that many clusters from your data. If you set ASSIGNLABELS to KMEANS, the algorithm uses the powerful K-means algorithm as a final step. Think of this as a cleanup crew for the algorithm's initial work. After the main spectral clustering part, K-means tidies up the results, assigning each data point to its most likely cluster. Using DISCRETIZE and KMEANS for ASSIGNLABELS will usually give you different results. They're like two completely different chefs preparing the same dish. They'll use different methods, leading to dishes that might look and taste quite different. It's false to say that NCLUSTERS must be less than the number of data points. I can certainly ask for more clusters than data points, though it wouldn't be very practical. That's like asking a chef to make 10 portions from only 2 ingredients. It's not impossible, but it won't be very meaningful.